Welcome to the Dynamic Duel podcast, where we review superhero films and debate the superiority between Marvel and DC by comparing their characters in stat-based battle simulations. I'm Johnny DC.
And I'm his twin brother, Marvelous Joe.
And in this episode, we are reviewing The Death of Superman. Now, I know this review was like 20 days late, but there was just so much going on at the time of its release with Comic-Con and Teen Titans Go to the movies.
And we wanted to slip a dual episode in there since we haven't gotten to those recently.
Right. So hopefully you guys have had time to watch the film. If you haven't, we definitely recommend watching it before you listen to this spoiler review.
Yeah, if you're a fan of Superman or of The Death of Superman story, or if you've liked any of the previous animated films that DC animation has had to offer, I would definitely recommend this one.
Yeah, I've seen it twice now. I actually watched Superman Doomsday, the 2007 animated film, right in between my two viewings, just for comparison's sake.
Yeah.
And I definitely have to say this is one of my favorite animated DC films so far that I've seen. I haven't seen all of them. Cool. But we'll get into our thoughts later on in this episode. Before that, we're going to break down the news from the past week. Now, just a disclaimer, we are recording this a day earlier than we usually do. We usually record on Mondays, and for the past few weeks, it seems like all of the major news items have been coming out on Mondays. So if there's something big that happens and you're like, oh, they didn't talk about it, it'll be in the next episode.
Yes.
So we're going to start things off with a James Gunn update. Gunngate update.
Gunngate.
And then we're going to go into, I guess, like always, Marvel's copying DC with a new streaming service that they're going to launch in 2019.
Well, Marvel's not copying DC. It's Disney that's copying DC.
Sure. That's the same thing now. We're going to touch on a lot of Sony Marvel Universe news. There's been a ton of news items that we want to talk about regarding Silver and Black and all these other characters that they have the rights to that they plan on making movies about. And then we're going to wrap things up with some DC television casting news regarding Batwoman and Cyborg.
Just a quick heads up that this Thursday, as every Thursday, we release a bonus podcast episode on our Patreon account, which you can visit by going to patreon.com/dynamicduel and access all that bonus content for just $2 a month. This Thursday will be an episode that we like to call Fast Pitch, where we pitch each other on comic book films that are not in development. I will be pitching Jonathan on what I think would make the perfect Inhumans film. So I wrote up a story treatment and cast it and everything, and I'm going to go ahead and present all of that to Jonathan and see if he buys it or sells it.
I totally bought it. It was way
Spoiler
better.
alert!
Oh, no!
Anyway, I'm pretty proud of my Inhumans pitch, so go ahead and check that out again at patreon.com/dynamicduel.
Yeah, and stay tuned to the end of this episode where you'll get to hear a sneak peek of Joseph's Inhumans Fast Pitch.
So that particular pitch, we'll be archiving that on September 15th, so be sure to sign up for Patreon if you want to hear that particular pitch.
Under the $2 tier. You could always access our back archive with the $5 a month tier.
Right, correct. One of our goals on Patreon is to get to 25 patrons, and when we hit that goal, what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and print out copies of the Dynamic Duel No Prize that we award to one listener every episode for giving the best answer to our question of the week. So help us reach that goal. We think it'll be a really cool gift for the fans that participate in the question of the week. And speaking of no prizes,
it's no prize time.
A no prize is an award Marvel used to give out up until the 90s to fans. Our version, the Dynamic Duel No Prize, is a digital award that we post on social media that Jonathan personally draws for those who we feel gave the best answer to our question of the week. Last week's question was, in your opinion, what's been the worst line ever in a Marvel or DC film? We do have a winner and some honorable mentions to go over. Mr. George Carnitis gave the answer, a bat bomb.
From Batman and Robin.
Yeah. It was given by Chris O'Donnell right before he and Batman surf doors down on.
It's just horrible. It's just horrible. It's the worst.
And Ken Johnson gave the answer, nobody would know, nobody, when Hawkeye is threatening Quicksilver with an arrow in Avengers Age of Ultron.
Right, and the line he says after that, too.
He's like, oh, last I saw him, Ultron was sitting on him. Gonna miss him already, quick little bastard. Yeah. I thought that line was pretty funny, actually. I laughed out loud when I saw it. I didn't think it was that bad. All right, honorable mention also goes to John Spees for his answer, you made a goddamn vampire Pomeranian, given by Ryan Reynolds in Blade Trinity. That was really a ridiculous dog in that movie.
Yeah. Tim Brown gave one of my least favorite lines in a superhero film, which is, do you know what happens to a toad when it is struck by lightning? The same thing that happens to everything else.
Oh, man. Well, I mean, it's supposed to be a dad joke. That's the joke, right? But you shouldn't insert dad jokes into your script, Because the joke is, what happens to a toad when it's struck by lightning? The punchline is, it croaks. But they never give the punchline. It's supposed to be inferred, except that nobody inferred it. But
she says that it's the same thing that happens to everything else.
Right. Yeah, she kind of like subverts what the writers hoped the audience would think.
Dumb.
Yeah.
Dumb.
Honorable mention to Joel Seagrave and Jamie Evans, who both gave the answer, I'm the Juggernaut, bitch. And I had to laugh out loud when I saw that in the theater. I know a lot of people don't like that line, but I actually kind of enjoyed it because that line was based off of a semi-viral video.
Yeah, it's like a meme.
Yeah, kind of. It was on YouTube, and it was like these guys who were dubbing over the old X-Men cartoon, and he kept saying, I'm the Juggernaut, bitch. So I thought that was pretty funny. And that was from X-Men 3, The Last Stand.
And the last one goes to Dan Baker for, guess what? It's overtime in the Catwoman movie, which that whole movie should just, every line in that should be on this list.
That was at the end fight, right? Where Sharon Stone had her pressed up against like the window about to fall out, and she's like, it's game over.
And then like just in a horrible moment of acting, Halle Berry is just like, guess what? It's overtime. It's so bad.
She has 2 lines on this list that were horrible.
Yeah.
Interesting.
That's right.
But the winner of the no prize for this episode...
And I do have to say that this is a reluctant winner on my behalf. The prize is going to a William Babb, who gave the answer Martha. Now, the reason I'm conceding this is because I've not seen another line so controversial and so heatedly debated among the internet. And it frustrates me to no end because I did not hate that line when I saw it in theaters. And
Martha.
The fact that everyone hates it just gets to me. I'm like, ugh.
Well, even Teen Titans Go, as we mentioned in our review a few episodes ago, they made fun of that line too.
Yeah.
Where Batman was like, what's your mom's name? Martha. Oh, we're best friends. What's your father's name?
Jonathan. Mine is Thomas. And then they start fighting again. Yeah. That was a great line. That was great. But no, it probably is like the most unfortunate line that I think has ever been in a superhero film.
Yeah, again, congratulations to William Babb. And if you want to win a no prize, go ahead and stay tuned to later on this episode when we give another question of the week.
On to the news.
All right, so a few weeks ago, we spoke about the James Gunn situation where he was fired by Disney from directing the Guardians of the Galaxy 3 movie because of some controversial tweets that he made about 8 to 10 years ago, back when he had a much edgier, worse, inappropriate sense of humor. We gave our feelings about that in that episode. We're on the side that, it's society's place to call it inappropriate behavior, but we should also be able to forgive those who apologize and exhibit personal growth.
Because it happened so long ago.
Right, exactly. And so what we learned regarding that particular story, it's been quite a few dramatic couple of weeks.
Yeah.
But apparently the rumor is that Kevin Feige is fighting in James Gunn's corner and wants him to still be involved in the Marvel Universe, whether that be as the director of Guardians of the Galaxy 3 or at least involved in some capacity. Now, according to The Hollywood Reporter, James Gunn is currently in exit negotiations with Disney,
right,
which may involve him actually returning in some capacity to develop a Marvel film.
Yeah, so he hasn't officially been fired yet. He's still going through the processes because he's done so much work for Disney. It's a process to let him go.
Exactly. Yeah, the sources have stated that an end-all verdict regarding his situation hasn't been determined by Disney. They do state in this article that Marvel plans on using James Gunn's script for the third Guardians of the Galaxy movie, which is the best news to come out of this horrible situation, I think. The Guardians of the Galaxy franchise is such James Gunn's baby that
Absolutely.
While I can see a different director perhaps tackling the third film, I can't see them going with the script not written by James Gunn because it is so uniquely his vision.
Yeah.
So,
and especially since other actors in the film, like Dave Bautista, has said, I refuse to work on this film unless they use James Gunn's script.
Right, exactly.
And I don't know if he could have actually done that because I think he's actually contracted to continue the role of Drax.
Uh-huh.
But, it just shows the amount of support.
Contracts can be broken, not
True.
without financial penalty, but they can be broken. And that's what he's threatening. He's kind of standing by his guns and was quoted as saying, it's nauseating working for a corporation that would enable these cyber Nazis, is what he's referring to them as.
Yeah. I was saying, it's great to see the amount of support that he has in his corner, even with the letter that they wrote. I think we've touched on that.
Yeah, and it's also other studios that aren't so beholden to these family-friendly values that Disney is. So the word on the street is that Gunn's been getting a whole bunch of offers from other studios that he can't really accept until these negotiations have gone through with Disney.
Right.
And, good for him. Like, there was even a rumor that DC was actually kind of courting him a little bit.
Yeah.
They had called him to work on a DC movie, which I think, he should do. If Marvel lets him go, then let's have James Gunn work on Justice League Dark or Green Lantern or something like that.
I would love for him to work on Justice League Dark. I think the question has been asked of him before, like, if you could direct a DC film, what would you do? And I think he said something like Metal Men.
Oh, really?
Which would be interesting. I mean, if he could do with Metal Man what he did with Guardians of the Galaxy, honestly, I'm all for James Gunn joining DC if he gets the opportunity. And that may be controversial, but I think he does fantastic work.
Yeah.
And I'm able to separate the work from the artist, especially over stuff that happened a decade ago.
Right. There was one studio exec that went on record with the Hollywood Reporter saying having an inappropriate sense of humor shouldn't be a crime. Which I agree with, I absolutely do not condone the things that he said and the jokes that he's made over the years.
But they are jokes. That's the thing.
Really crappy jokes.
If he was if he was sincere about the things he was saying, then yeah, that makes him the worst person on the planet. But it's like Sarah Silverman has said recently, like, yeah, you didn't find it funny. Humor is subjective.
Yeah, Sarah Silverman is actually under fire too because she made a similar pedophilia-related joke, and she works for Disney too.
Right.
She's doing the voice of
Vanellope von Schweetz for Wreck-It Ralph.
Wreck-It Ralph, right, exactly. And yet no action has been brought against her. So I think Disney is finding themselves in kind of like this no-win situation.
Yeah, what are they going to do? Cancel the Wreck-It Ralph 2 movie? What can they do?
I don't know. Make sure Silver Silverman doesn't work for them anymore. I don't know what they could do. But yeah, it's a real tricky situation that fortunately at least has had some good news over the past week with the reveal that Marvel plans on using Gunn's script.
Yeah.
Which is kind of hypocritical to fire the man but still keep his script. If you're so against what he tweeted, then you think you would distance from him completely.
Right.
So anyway, we'll be reporting on further developments as they happen. Stay tuned to Dynamic Duel for all things James Gunn related.
Yeah, you'll probably hear it last here because of all the news sites that report things, but you'll hear our thoughts on them.
So speaking of Marvel and Disney, Disney recently announced their streaming service that they're going to debut around the end of 2019.
Copiers. Sorry.
Bless you. So what's relevant Marvel-wise is that this Disney streaming service is going to include Captain Marvel and Avengers 4.
Yeah.
Which means that I don't necessarily have to buy them on iTunes. I could just stream it off the app.
Right.
Unless, of course, it's going to have rotating content, which they probably will, which means I'll have to buy it anyway. So I'm not too terribly excited about a Disney app because I'm not really a consumer of Disney material outside of the Marvel brand.
Right. Like you're not into like the Disney princesses or even necessarily too much Pixar, right?
Yeah, not so much. They're going to have like a lot of content on there, but I'm only going to be interested in just a small section of it. So I probably won't be subscribing to this one.
Really?
Yeah.
I wonder how many people will. What I really liked about the DC Universe streaming app is it includes comics, it includes merchandise and things like that.
Well, and you can include stuff like mature content as well. I mean, look at the Titan show that's coming out. You couldn't have something like that on the Disney app.
Yeah, I'm kind of surprised that they're keeping it all under Disney and not splitting out like different like franchise apps like Star Wars and Marvel and Disney Princesses and Pixar.
Definitely. I would prefer to have a Marvel streaming app as opposed to a Disney streaming app with Marvel content on it. A Star Wars app would be great too. I wonder if they're going to, now that they acquired Fox, if they're going to release those franchises on the Disney app too, or if they're going to be releasing a separate Fox streaming app. Even if they just split it into two apps where they have like the family friendly stuff and then they have like the non-family friendly stuff that includes like Marvel, Star Wars, that kind of older demographic franchises.
Like Predator and Aliens?
Right, yeah. Include that stuff, like all that sci-fi stuff in one app. That's how I would do it.
That's not going to happen.
No.
But that would be cool.
Yeah. It just seems better that way. You know, with the wide variety of content that Disney has access to, it almost seems like it's going to be more like a Hulu as opposed to like a DC Universe app.
Well, they basically own Hulu now.
Yeah, which is why I'm thinking like, you know, just release the Marvel movies on Hulu and keep your Disney app separate. That way I don't have to buy it. I just really want them to have a Marvel app one day, but it's probably not going to happen considering even like, you know, the Spider-Man stuff is still owned by Sony. So
yeah,
that brings us to our question of the week. What Marvel content do you hope to see on Disney's upcoming streaming app? whether that's like original shows, comics, merch, a fan portal, like that DC Universe stuff, or even something else. Let us know what would be your dream content to have on the Disney app. Write in and post your answer to our Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, or email us at dynamicduelpodcast@gmail.com. We'll pick our favorite answer and draw that person a Dynamic Duel No Prize that we'll post to social media. So in further Marvel news, actually this is Sony Marvel news.
Yeah.
There was a bunch of developments that came out regarding Venom, the Silver and Black movie, Kraven the Hunter, and apparently they're developing films like Silk and Jackpot and Nightwatch.
Who the hell is Jackpot? And who the hell is Nightwatch?
I do not know actually who Jackpot is. Like, it was rumored that she was actually Mary Jane as a superhero.
Yeah.
Because, Mary Jane had the famous line, "Face a tiger, you just hit the jackpot."
Yeah.
So everybody thought it was her, and then it turned out it was just somebody else, and then I lost complete interest. So
oh my gosh.
I didn't care anymore. But I know Nightwatch, he kind of looks like Spawn. And he was in the Spider-Man comics. He was a Spider-Man bad guy who actually manipulated the vibratory planes of reality to manipulate time so that he actually went into an alternate universe where he was a hero instead of a villain. So that's kind of his story, which might make for an interesting movie.
One more thing I never wanted to see.
Another movie that probably nobody asked for was Silk. Even though she's a semi-interesting character, she is a girl who was bitten by the radioactive spider before it died after biting Peter Parker.
Uh-huh.
So I mainly know her from the Spider-Verse story, but I've never really read any of her individual comics.
Yeah, I've seen her before. She has a cool look.
Yeah, she does. But the two big news items that came out of all this Sony Marvel news was that Silver and Black is being split into two movies.
Thank goodness.
Thank God. Because, again, nobody asked for Silver and Black. So apparently there's going to be a Silver Sable movie, I guess, and a Black Cat film. I kind of still feel like these are still movies that nobody's asking for. As interesting as Black Cat may be as a character, and Silver Sable as well, they're certainly more interesting than, say, Nightwatch. They're still not interesting enough, I think, to carry their own movie. Even among Marvel fans, there aren't enough Black Cat and Silver Sable fans out there, I think, to warrant the investment that they'll be making in these films, despite any size budget they may give it.
Yeah, it's not stopping Sony. I recently read that they have, the rights to, over 100 Marvel characters.
Over 900 Marvel characters.
What?
Yeah.
What?
They have the rights to any Marvel character that has debuted in a Spider-Man comic.
Oh, wow.
So that includes Spider-Man, all of his villains, all of his side characters, even the obscure ones. So
wouldn't that include the Punisher?
That's a good question. I don't think he's included in it. I think it includes Spider-Man characters who never really expanded beyond the Spider-Man comics.
Yeah. At least Venom has a large fan base behind him.
Yeah, and that's why I think that film would work. And actually it's tracking to have a pretty decent opening box office weekend. But there is news that came out regarding that movie. According to Variety, they're saying that the Venom film is going to be PG-13 to leave the option open for a crossover with Tom Holland's Spider-Man and the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Now, we were promised a rated R Venom movie.
I don't know if we were promised that.
Well, we were rumored to be promised to have a rated R Venom movie, and I was actually really looking forward to that, especially when that last trailer came out and you have Venom threatening to eat people alive on numerous occasions. So I kind of wanted to see a really violent superhero film where the protagonist is this crazy monster, because like I said before, that's something we have yet to see in superhero movies.
Yeah, we shouldn't have been surprised by this, though. It's not like they've released any kind of Red Band trailer. If it was going to be rated R, like the Deadpool film trailers, they released the Red Band versions.
Yeah, they would be heavily marketing that aspect.
Exactly.
You're absolutely right. Should have seen this coming. But I do like the idea, though, that Sony is wanting to include Spider-Man in a Venom sequel or vice versa, have Venom appear in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Because that's the one thing that I said that they have to do with these spin-off Spider-Man films is really tie them into the Spider-Man character. Otherwise, they're just worthless and pointless.
Well, I've heard rumors that, Venom is going to be the tie between all the characters. Kraven is going to be hunting Venom.
Oh my God, no. No. You can't make Kraven a Venom villain. Kraven has to be a Spider-Man villain. That's the whole point. That's the whole thing.
I don't know.
You have to tie it into Spider-Man. He's supposed to be the glue that holds all of that universe together.
I'm not sure Sony agrees with you.
Well, Sony's stupid then. God, no. Ugh. Don't make Venom the center of your universe, and definitely keep going along the lines of including Venom into the MCU, or at least having Spider-Man appear in a Venom sequel. So, yay, PG-13 Venom. No.
Said no one.
No. No eating heads off of bodies. All right.
On to DC news. So actress Ruby Rose has been cast as Batwoman in the Supergirl CW show. Now, it's been said that she's going to appear in Supergirl, but I've also heard that she's going to appear like in the crossover event that they have every year.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so I think she's going to start off in Supergirl, but eventually she'll make her way into all of the different shows that they have.
Yeah, it seems like pretty good casting.
It seems like perfect casting.
Well, she was good in John Wick. Her and John Wick had a pretty damn good fight, so she's really good with the action and stuff.
That's actually the only thing I've ever seen her in.
Oh, really?
And that was just a clip. Because, once I heard she was cast, I was like, who's Ruby Rose? So I, Googled her, and I saw that clip, but it was a pretty cool action clip.
Yeah.
She seems perfect for the character. Batwoman herself, the character, was created by Greg Rucka. He wrote Wonder Woman for a long time, and he's very much into LGBTQ characters. Just adding that diversity. Yeah, and so not only does she have the action chops, but the actress herself is actually a lesbian, just like Batwoman. So it's fitting.
Yeah, I don't know much about the character of Batwoman herself. Like, what's her real name? What's her background?
Her real name is Kate Kane. She's actually Bruce Wayne's cousin, and she's trained alongside Batman and helps him in his fight of crime. She has a really cool look. I think she has one of the coolest looks out of any of the DC female heroes.
Yeah, her costume is pretty sweet.
Yeah.
But she's a redhead, like Batgirl, right?
It's a wig.
Oh, it is?
Yeah, but this isn't like natural ginger-haired hair color.
Oh, like the more
this
orangey
is like
type?
bright red.
That's pretty cool. Is she like especially violent or something, like the Red Hood or something?
She is. She is more violent than Batman for sure, because she has a military background.
Oh, really?
Her father was in the military, and that's one of the reasons I think in the comics why they never really adopted Bruce Wayne was because her father was overseas and she was with him.
Oh, okay.
So yeah, she went into the military and then I think she was kicked out because she was gay.
Wow.
And then she became Batwoman. Yeah.
Interesting. I'm looking forward to seeing what the costume looks like because the CW has done pretty well with their costumes, I think.
They have.
So,
although, I don't know, I think they just kind of ruined the Flash costume. His like helmet actually like has a built-in brow now. It's pretty weird. In other casting news, Joivan Wade has been cast as Cyborg for the DC Universe's Doom Patrol. Now, I'm not too familiar with Joivan Wade. I know he was in the new The First Purge movie.
Okay.
But what I think is more interesting is we had sort of heard story rumors that Cyborg was going to be the person to kind of bring the Doom Patrol together in a way, I think, in the Doom Patrol series. So I guess Cyborg will be in that series, which to me seems kind of redundant if you already have Robot Man.
Right.
I'm not sure why he's in that series. I think it's really just to have an A-lister on that show, because otherwise people may not be interested in watching it.
I don't know if Cyborg is even an A-list character. I guess he has some popularity going now. But yeah, he's always traditionally been a member of the Titans.
Yeah.
And it's interesting that they're actually putting him on the Doom Patrol team as opposed to the Titans team.
Right. He's like the one character missing from the Titans show. And if you were to ask me, it should be Beast Boy who was on Doom Patrol.
Right.
Because he was actually a member of that team in the comics.
Right. And it's so weird because this is DC's streaming service. They're completely in charge of the content. And yet they seem to be making mistakes that studios make when they're not familiar with the content.
Well, I don't know if this is a mistake yet. It puzzles me for sure. But we'll see how it goes. It'll be a while before we see Joivan Wade as Cyborg.
Hopefully the costume's good. I thought that the special effects in the Justice League movie were mostly pretty good for Cyborg. But yeah, you need some kind of really good special effects to pull him off on screen. Yeah,
I hope they don't go the CG route. I hope it's more practical.
It sounds like it would be a heavy costume if it was practical, though.
Maybe. They do a pretty good job with Hank Henshaw, Cyborg Superman, in the Supergirl show. He has like this prosthetic kind of half cyborg face in that show, and I'm pretty sure it's practical.
Okay. Well, he was in the Death of Superman movie, so now that all the news is out of the way, let's go ahead and get into our review of the Death of Superman.
So as I mentioned earlier at the start of this episode, this is probably my favorite DC animated film that I've seen in quite a while, except for maybe like Wonder Woman and Under the Red Hood. I think this is next on that list.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Was that good? What about Batman Ninja?
Actually, yeah, that was good. To me, this was like as good as Batman Ninja. Now, I haven't seen things like the Flashpoint Paradox. I've heard that's really good, but this is definitely up there.
Okay.
This film did something that none of the other DC animated films has been able to do for me.
Which is make you cry.
Which is make me shed a tear. It's that good. And it's that effective at making me feel the loss that the other characters in the movie felt. I definitely recommend it. If you haven't seen it yet, please watch it before listening to this review.
Yeah, I mean, it's available to rent pretty cheap. So
yeah.
And it's only like an 81-minute movie. So
not long ago.
It's a quick watch.
Yeah. I think it'll make people feel more about Superman than they have in a really long time, maybe ever. For me, it had the added bonus of nostalgia. Because, you know, I've mentioned, I think, in our first episode that some of the first DC comic books I ever read were of the death of Superman and the reign of the Superman storylines. Mm-hmm. Our neighbors collected everything from the death of Superman onward, and I just ate it up. Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's not a perfect film. In fact, when it was over, I wasn't quite sure how I felt about it because I had such fond memories of the Superman Doomsday animated film that came out in 2007.
Yeah, that's right. This kind of retread that storyline.
It did. And that was DC's first PG-13 animated film. And when that came out, at that time, I was like, holy cow, this action is going to be so intense and so violent.
Now, wasn't that movie a spin-off of this Adventures of Superman cartoon, or was it something different?
It was produced by Bruce Timm, but it wasn't like connected to that universe in any way.
Oh, okay.
The animated series had its own Doomsday storyline.
Oh, okay.
But when they did Superman Doomsday, again, the big selling point was it's PG-13, so we could be a lot more intense.
Right. How does the intensity of that movie compare to the intensity of this movie? Because this one was pretty intense.
It was. This was much more intense. Again, I rented Superman Doomsday right after I watched this one. And we'll review that film sometime later. I don't know when, but that movie is nowhere near as good as this one, I think. I shed 0 tears during the Doomsday film. And after I watched it, I rewatched Death of Superman, and I shed a tear again, even knowing what was going to happen. It's like that impactful. Usually I like watching films at least twice before I review them, just so like to solidify my stance on it and know exactly how I feel.
Yeah.
And I definitely knew after my second viewing of Death of Superman that, well, it may not have been as enjoyable as something like Batman Ninja. Mm-hmm. It was still really good. And some of it was really great. The action was fantastic.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. I think that's one of the pros of this film. To go off of what you said about comparing this movie to Batman Ninja, I would also agree that they were of similar qualities, where Batman Ninja may have had better quality animation. It also was kind of ridiculous story-wise, whereas this one had poorer animation, but actually was pretty spot on in terms of story, in faithfulness to the comic, and in the characterizations of the characters themselves. I think Superman is a hard character to nail. And I think that this film did it in a way that I haven't seen on screen in quite a while.
Yeah, again, I think that's why I was saying earlier, like, if you don't feel any kind of connection to Superman, if you think he's a lame character, definitely watch this film, because the hope that he inspires amongst the other characters is exactly who this character is. But not only that, is they do a fantastic job with Clark Kent as well, I think.
Yeah.
And the relationship that he has with Lois Lane.
Definitely.
And I think that really sets up the heartbreak that you feel later on towards the end of the film.
Yeah, definitely. You know, it makes me almost want to go back and watch the other films in the DC animated universe, starting with, I think it was Justice League War that kind of like restarted this continuity.
Well, it started with the Flashpoint Paradox, and that led into Justice League War.
Oh, okay. Yeah, so like I would want to go back and start watching those films to try to get a little bit more development with my characters before watching this film. Not that, you know, they were underdeveloped, but it felt like they were actually fully developed by the time this movie started.
Yeah, this definitely feels like it takes place in a universe that has been established.
Yeah, it feels like a sequel.
Yeah,
which it is.
Yeah, you have characters introduced like the Flash and the Cyborg, pretty much like in the opening scene.
Yeah,
and they're talking about things that you're not really familiar with, but they've established in prior films, like Cyborg's relationship with his father.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, I don't know. It just gets me more excited to review the past films as we get to them.
Yeah, it kind of makes me regret that we don't review these films like in sequential order. Like we just kind of like jump around. But no, we'll definitely get to them. I'm definitely eager to review Flashpoint Paradox and get this thing started because I haven't seen it. To touch again on Batman Ninja's animation style, like that is hands down like the best DC animation I've seen. This one, compared to Superman Doomsday, I would say is a step up. It has a little bit more of that like anime kind of vibe, especially when I see like the Wonder Woman action scene that she had with Doomsday, which was a really cool scene. You could definitely see like the anime influence sort of like peek through.
Sometimes, because you have those blur action lines in the background when they're going like super fast and stuff like that.
Yeah, I think the character design also kind of adds to that anime flavor. But otherwise, the animation on this is pretty cheap.
It's a little choppy. Like when they turn like 90 degrees, they rotate and stuff.
Yeah.
You could tell there's like maybe 10 frames in there.
Yeah, for sure. But they did the same thing with, Superman Doomsday. So it's not like it's the biggest detriment because we've seen it before.
Yeah.
And honestly, after a while, the animation may be really bad, but like I don't really see it after a while, especially with some of the action scenes they were able to pull off.
Yeah, definitely. There were some great moments that actually made me say wow during this. So
yeah, I think you could say that not only has this been like the most I've felt for Superman in a long time, this is probably the best action I've ever seen from Superman in like forever, like animated.
Even Man of Steel?
Yeah, I would say this is better than Man of Steel's action.
I thought they were comparable, actually.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Because the action in Man of Steel was pretty hardcore, and that's how I would describe the action in this film. Although it's much more violent in this film.
It is. Like, you literally see Doomsday just, like, crush skulls in his fist.
Yeah, crushes them like grapes in his fist, and there's just so much animated blood that just splatters out. It was crazy.
The camping scene is what got to me, because I went camping, like, the weekend before I saw this film.
Yeah.
And there were definitely moments there where I was like, is that a bear? Is that a bear? So, like, this scene definitely, it was, like, traumatic when I was watching it.
Yeah, it was just kind of heartbreaking, like, especially with the girl in the tent. She's, like, wondering what's going on outside, and her husband or whatever, he's already a rag doll in Doomsday's hands and stuff.
Yeah.
It's quite brutal.
Yeah, the characters of Metropolis that represent Metropolis, like the camping couple, like the kid who had like the Nintendo DS that was saved by Superman later on.
Yeah.
It's those kind of like touches that really make you feel the world that they've established.
Yeah, great world building in those small moments.
Yeah, exactly. You feel like Metropolis is a real place.
Yeah, definitely.
The city of Metropolis was its own character in this film, and it was like a really compelling character. All of the characters in this film, I thought, were really compelling versions of these characters that we've known for a really long time. Again, especially with Superman. Jerry O'Connell did a fantastic job, I think, with the voice. And I think he's done the voice in prior versions within this animated continuity, but he sounded a lot like a mixture between Tim Daly and Brandon Routh to me.
Yeah, definitely. I kind of got those vibes as well. He didn't sound like Jerry O'Connell to me, at least the Jerry O'Connell I knew from like
Little Fat Boy in the Stand and like Sliders, the TV show.
Right, exactly. Yeah, he sounded like Superman to me. And I think he had great chemistry with Lois Lane.
It doesn't hurt that he's actually married to Rebecca Romijn, the voice actress for Lois Lane.
Right, yeah. Yeah, the chemistry really shone through.
Even when he was Clark Kent and Superman. I think that Jerry O'Connell, there was a distinct difference between those two voices. And for both characters, I think it felt really real, the relationship. Like when Lois Lane was talking with him outside of his apartment about how it's sad that he just told her that she knows him better than anyone. Mm-hmm. It felt really grounded.
That really sets up how emotional the ending is. But yeah, Rebecca Romijn and Jerry O'Connell give better performances in this movie than anything else I think I've seen them in, honestly.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, Rebecca Romijn did a fantastic voice performance. This version of Lois Lane, I think, is my favorite version of the character that I've seen on screen in maybe forever.
The stuff that she's given to do here, I think, makes me care about her more than, like, say, Amy Adams.
Yeah. And to me, like, she was sort of like the main character of the film in a way. She definitely was after Superman's death. And so she kind of had to be. But, like, the little moments between her and Cat Grant just talking about Clark Kent and stuff, like, I really enjoyed those moments, like, more than I thought I would.
Well, it's like kind of weird because it's, like, gossipy drama type stuff that's in this, superhero action film. Yeah. But it wasn't boring.
Right.
Which is so
It was funny.
Like,
it was funny. There was a lot of funny bits about it.
They pulled it off, for sure. It's just two women talking about her weird relationship with this weird guy. And it works.
It does. I think the one character that they didn't pull off well, though, was probably Lex Luthor.
He was a little weird. I found out that the voice actor for Lex Luthor was Rainn Wilson.
Yes.
From The Office.
Right.
And I think he did a good job with the performance, but I don't think, like, the character was written that great. He was kind of annoying.
He was annoying, and he was also incompetent. And I think that's the last thing you want Lex Luthor to be. Like, Rainn Wilson's, or at least, the writer's interpretation of this version of Lex Luthor came across as just like a bully. Like he just kept insulting his employees and was coming up with incorrect theories about Doomsday and stuff like that. And it's like, why even write him into the movie?
That's true. He was kind of unnecessary.
He was.
It's like he was only there to kind of set up the whole Cadmus Superboy thing.
Right.
But I have to say, like, I love to hate Lex Luthor. It didn't really affect me as much.
If Superman Doomsday has anything over this film, it is its depiction of Lex Luthor. Like, Lex Luthor in Superman Doomsday was probably one of my favorite depictions of the character. And this one just could not hold a candle to that one.
Why? What was so special about Lex Luthor in that movie?
In Superman Doomsday, he just came across as much more intelligent, as much more of a scientist than just kind of like a bully businessman.
Uh-huh.
To me, Lex Luthor is sort of like DC's Tony Stark. He should be competent and he should be smart and he shouldn't be making these wild accusations that are not actually true and have no real basis in anything.
I'm trying to remember what accusations he made.
Well, he was saying like, oh, is Doomsday like some kind of like harbinger for an invading force? Something sent to our planet to take out any kind of alpha.
An apex predator.
Apex predator, yeah.
Right.
And I was like, what are you talking about?
But isn't that kind of what Doomsday is?
No, he wasn't sent to Earth by any kind of invading force. He's sort of his own thing. And it's kind of unfortunate. This is another instance, just like Superman Doomsday, where they didn't really get into the backstory of Doomsday. Yeah. The closest we kind of got was Martian Manhunter, like trying to read his mind, but it didn't really explain what Doomsday is. And that doesn't make him the most compelling villain.
Yeah.
To me, they kind of failed on both villain fronts. I was really hoping they would kind of go into some kind of backstory for Doomsday, but they didn't. If you want to learn more about Doomsday, you can listen to our Doomsday versus Hulk duel episode, in which we go into far more detail than you probably ever wanted to know about the character.
Yeah, you went into his backstory for about 20 minutes on that episode.
Yeah, it was ridiculous.
It is an exhaustive report on the character of Doomsday, for sure.
But he is a fascinating character. And so that's, I think, why I was really hoping that they would sort of give an inkling of what he's about. He's very tragic. In some sense, he's sort of like a baby who was never loved, and he was literally killed over and over again. And he just became this unstoppable, full of hate creature. Maybe they'll touch on it in the next film, Reign of Superman, but I kind of doubt it. I think his story is kind of over.
Yeah, well, he's dead now, so.
Yeah. Well, that hasn't stopped Doomsday before in the comics.
Death?
Yeah.
That's true.
But, he served his role, in the film, which was just this unstoppable force for Superman and, the rest of the Justice League.
Yeah.
The Justice League was pretty cool. It's always cool to see the Justice League on screen.
They were more involved in the story than I thought they were going to be. I know in the comics, the Justice League helped out in the fight against Doomsday.
Yeah, it was the Justice League of America. It was a slightly different team. It was like Blue Beetle, Booster Gold, Maxima, Fire. So, yeah, there were different members. But, since these ones have already been established, they used this for this film.
Yeah. Well, I like this team better anyway.
Yeah.
It was cool to see Martian Manhunter, I think.
Yeah, I'm not sure if he's been in the previous DC animated films. He must have been if he was here. But yeah, he had a cool look, for sure. The scene where he's being burned by the fire and just like that scream, I was like, oh my gosh.
Yeah, that was kind of...
I've never quite seen it depicted that way.
Rough. I felt bad for the guy.
Yeah, absolutely. It's like, oh yeah, this dude's definitely weak to fire.
You would think that Martian Manhunter would be able to take down Doomsday on his own. But yeah, that whole fire weakness really gets in the way.
Yeah, we also got to see Green Lantern, who's voiced by Nathan Fillion, who does a great Green Lantern voice.
Yeah, I liked some of the tricks that he brought out. Like, I always like seeing what constructs Green Lantern is able to come up with during the course of a fight.
Yeah.
And in this one, he had, like, that jackhammer.
That was pretty cool.
Yeah, I was like, oh, that's awesome. He seems so powerful. You would think that he would be able to defeat Doomsday as well.
Nope.
But, Doomsday was just able to shatter his constructs, and there was really nothing that Green Lantern was able to do.
What any of them could do, even the Flash. So, there's a really cool scene with the Flash trying to take out Doomsday with Hawkman's mace. And that was a really cool scene to like watch Doomsday's eyes as he's tracking the Flash and then locks on him, and then bam. The Flash was a cool character. I really liked his joke in the Justice League. I guess it was the Hall of Justice, where they're talking about Batman going to parent-teacher conferences or something like that.
That was pretty funny. Flash also served a pivotal role thematically as a comparison to Superman and Lois Lane's relationship when he was talking about how he was getting married to Iris and how he was completely transparent with her about his superheroics.
Yeah, he sort of helped Superman overcome the struggle of revealing to Lois Lane who he was as Superman, which was a really compelling arc.
Yeah, you never really think about how much Clark Kent struggles with his secret. I think this is the best I've ever seen that struggle manifested on screen.
Yeah, I agree. And to me, that's always been like the most interesting dynamic between Clark Kent and Lois Lane was, Lois, before they're married, when she hasn't yet learned who Superman is yet.
Yeah.
I think once she learns and once they get married, it kind of ruins that dynamic. It's certainly like the relationship dynamic that has the most like tension, Although I do have to admit that Lois Lane not recognizing the difference between Clark Kent and Superman because Clark Kent wears glasses is sort of the most ridiculous thing ever. And it's made painfully obvious in this film.
Yes. Clark Kent, they're sitting at this restaurant when he decides to tell her, and he says, Lois, I'm Superman. And she laughs, and then all of a sudden he takes off these thin rimmed glasses, and she looks at him for like 2 seconds, and then her mouth drops. And it's like, come on, you moved like 5 pixels off of this image. And now it's apparent to you? I mean...
Right. I always liked it more in the comics where like his Clark Kent is more like slouched over with messier hair. And
just the way he carries himself.
Yeah. And his glass lenses like dim the blue of his eyes and just different things.
I feel like no one sold that better than Christopher Reeve.
Yeah, for sure. For sure.
Absolutely. The believability of that dual persona.
Yeah.
Because in here it was just ridiculous. But you had mentioned Hawkman earlier. I was actually surprised to see Hawkman in this movie. Like maybe Hawk Girl, because I know that she was big in that Justice League cartoon.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, that's fucking Hawkman.
Yeah, I was surprised to see him. And he had the electric mace. I guess he must have stolen that from Hawk Girl.
But I like his character design in this. It was pretty cool. His armor, his nth metal.
Yeah, it was really cool. I also liked the character design of Aquaman.
Oh, yeah. He had those mutton chops.
Yeah. His costume, I think, is really cool. And he played sort of a bigger role than some of the other characters within this film, just in that it was his soldiers who sort of first stumbled across Doomsday.
Right.
He wasn't involved too much in the fight. Like, he sort of jumped on Doomsday's back and electrocuted him with his trident, and then, like, that was pretty much it. But the character design is really cool, as is Cyborg's.
Yeah, I mean, and Cyborg had a slightly bigger part just because of the whole Star Labs involvement with his father and stuff like that. And he was a good introduction into the character of John Henry Irons.
Yeah, and the one character whose character design I've never really been a big fan of in these animated films is Wonder Woman.
Yeah, I don't like the whole like tank top type thing that she has going on. Where, like, it goes around her neck. Like, usually it's just, like, a bodice kind of thing.
Right. I don't like the ponytail. I was, like, cheering when Doomsday, like, smashed that ponytail. I was like, yes! She looked so much cooler without it.
Yeah. And, like, when she, like, let her hair down, that's when she, like, really meant business.
Yeah. I have a feeling that in her next animated film, which is Wonder Woman Bloodlines coming out next year, we don't know too much about it, but I have an inkling that it's going to be based off of the New 52 Brian Azzarello's Wonder Woman run, the initial run of her comic. And I really hope they bring in the movie comic costume.
With the skirt?
With the skirt, because she needs that, I think.
And the hair that's down.
Right.
Yeah. I guess Rosario Dawson did her voice.
Yes.
And she kind of played a pivotal role in, like, assisting Clark in how to handle his secret with Lois Lane, compelling him to be honest with her.
Yeah, well, in the New 52, Wonder Woman and Superman actually dated. And I think that carried over to the animated universe as well.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay.
So they have a history together. They've had a relationship. How did you feel about Rosario Dawson's line delivery?
I thought it was fine.
Really?
I mean, Wonder Woman wasn't the most interesting character. She was just kind of more like the snoopy ex-girlfriend.
Yeah.
But I thought her fight scenes were good, and I had no problem with Rosario Dawson's delivery.
I've never been a big fan of the dialogue they give her in these films. I don't think Rosario Dawson sells it the best way. Like, I call thee out, monster, kind of ridiculousness. It's just so old-fashioned, I guess.
That may be a writing problem.
It is. It absolutely is.
Yeah.
Oh, I think it's both. I think it's a writing and a performance problem. But we'll see how she does in her own film.
Yeah.
So I think the other interesting characters that they have in this film are sort of the setup characters for the next film. You know, John Henry Irons, who I guess is voiced by Cress Williams, the guy who portrays Black Lightning in the Black Lightning television show.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. I thought that was cool.
Yeah, it didn't really stand out to me. But yeah, it's cool they picked him as the actor. I'm sure we'll be hearing a lot more dialogue from him in the next movie.
Did any of the Reign of the Superman characters stand out to you?
John Henry Irons was the one that stood out the most. We barely got a glimpse of Superboy.
Yeah, he got the least amount of character development.
I guess we only got a brief glimpse of Eradicator, who was like moving Superman's body, I think.
Yes.
And then, a Cyborg Superman, he had like his own whole scene, Hank Henshaw,
Yeah.
Up in space, waiting for Superman to save him after an incoming asteroid had crashed into his space shuttle and stuff.
Yeah, the story of Hank Henshaw is supposed to be exactly like the story of Reed Richards. Him, his wife, and his 2 astronaut friends were bombarded by cosmic rays in the comics, or by radiation. But what happens to them is like sort of like their minds become like detached from their bodies. So I thought it was a really cool setup for Hank Henshaw. When he was just kept repeating to himself, "Don't worry, guys, Superman will save us."
Yeah.
Like you really, I think, understand where he's going to be coming from in the next film, in that Superman didn't save his family.
Right. It's not entirely clear what that whole scene was about if you didn't know that there was going to be a sequel to this movie, The Reign of the Superman.
True,
It kind
true.
of felt like out of nowhere. Like all of a sudden we're spending so much time with these astronauts that we don't really know who they are.
And it kind of came out of nowhere, the post-credits scene that they had where Cyborg Superman just kind of flies in from outer space. In the comics, Cyborg Superman's, Hank Henshaw's mind went into Superman's birthing matrix, and he kind of assembled himself a new body using Kryptonian tech. So he actually has like Kryptonian DNA. It's interesting. I'm not sure how they're going to convey his origin in the next film.
If he's already coming to Earth at the end of this one.
Right.
Right.
All 4 of the end credit scenes were pretty cool. I thought it was kind of a nice kind of setup for each one. The scene of the Eradicator taking Superman's body from like its grave was totally like Jesus's empty tomb.
Yeah, that's kind of how they played it. Allegory was pretty apparent.
Yeah, like Lois Lane was like Mary, like running up and just seeing like there's nothing there. Instead of an angel, you see, wait, maybe Superman is probably the Eradicator, just like floating up there and just flying off. It was a great scene to end on.
The end funeral scene was kind of weird with Lex Luthor's speech.
That was weird.
Because I'm not sure, because like Lex Luthor was hating Superman this whole time, but then he gave a pretty good speech talking about how great Superman was. Why would he do that? Is it because deep down he respects Superman, or was he just lying?
He was absolutely lying. I think they kind of outrightly said that with the whole neck brace thing.
Oh, yeah.
In the following scene, he's not wearing it. It was something he was just pretending to need, right?
Yeah.
In Superman Doomsday, I think it was pretty interesting with that character in that it showed like sort of his mindset after like the death of Superman was kind of stolen from him. So I kind of imparted some of that onto this version of the character. But I agree, they didn't really do a good job of displaying how Lex Luthor felt about Superman's death.
I would agree with that. It just kind of feeds into, this feeling that I have that the villains actually weren't that well developed in this movie.
Right. That funeral scene, man, that was a tearjerker. The scene that actually made me shed a tear, though, was Bilbo Bebowski saying his prayer and then ending it asking God why it was Superman and not him. I was like, oh.
The part that made me tear up a little bit was when Lois Lane was throwing rocks at Doomsday.
Oh, yeah.
Right before Doomsday landed the killing blow on Superman. It was like, Superman's near death. All Doomsday has to do is like punch him one more time. And all of a sudden, this lowly mortal like stands up for the super being. And
Confesses her love.
Right. Yeah, exactly. That was such a touching moment. And, obviously she can't do anything. Obviously she's going to die. She like pretty much is prepared to sacrifice herself to do anything to try and save her love.
It's all she could do is just to throw a couple of rocks.
Yeah. Ugh. That was the most touching part.
And then once she does confess her love for Superman, like that's like the last ounce of strength that Superman needed to finally deal the coup de grace on Doomsday.
Right. Yeah, it was a great moment. Although, like, you have to think that if all Superman needed was just to find like the strength to just punch Doomsday really hard in the head, why didn't he do that sooner?
Because he needed to know that she loved him, okay? No, actually, I was wondering during that scene, like, Doomsday is right in front of Lois Lane when that final blow happens. There's such, like, this massive shockwave that emanates from that final blow. Like, I'm pretty sure Lois Lane would have, like, been flown backwards and had a few broken ribs from that.
Or been completely incinerated.
One of those two.
Yeah, because it was a huge final blow that Superman gave. But he also got simultaneously stabbed by Doomsday through his body.
Yeah, I think that was a call out to maybe the movie, maybe.
Is that not the way it happened in the comics?
No, in the comics, like, they both, like, punch each other in the face, if I remember correctly, just, like, really hard. Like, they both just give, like, one big final punch, because they had both taken, like, a really big beating.
Yeah.
So,
Okay.
yeah, that was a good scene. And other emotional moments, just like, the little boy with the Nintendo DS just hugging Superman, and the scene where, Lois Lane gets out of the helicopter and sort of like tries to help lift up the weary Superman. And she's like, I got you. And he's like, you've got me. Who's got you?
Yeah, that was a nice little callback to Superman, the movie.
Yeah, that was a great line, I thought. That kind of got me choked up as well. So much emotion in this movie.
But it wasn't just emotion. I mean, the whole fight between Superman and Doomsday was pretty much like, it felt like a whole third or half of this movie.
Yeah, I think it was like half.
There were some pretty good moments. Like when they were fighting on the bridge, there was a cool shot where Superman was like dragging Doomsday on the street toward the camera in like this cool anime effect. And it looked like something that was like out of a live action movie, like a great angle for a live action movie. And there was also this one part where he flew into Doomsday to punch him, and it was like this over the shoulder shot that was reminiscent of Man of Steel.
Yeah. There was another cool shot I remember on the bridge of where we were sort of like inside a car looking at a woman, but like her car had been ripped open by Superman trying to save her. And you could see off in the distance like them fighting. It was a very kind of like claustrophobic, like you're really there in the moment angle.
Yeah, that whole scene was just great. Fantastic. That's the part that stands out the most in my mind when I think of their fight. And also the fact that Superman didn't knock Doomsday up into outer space.
He tried. I think he tried in this film.
But like all he had to do was just hit him up, and instead he hit him down.
That even backfired on him because Doomsday just like countered that, and that's what led to the final sort of blast crater where kind of like his last stand was.
Right, yeah.
The reign of the Superman movie is going to be only so lucky if its action was half as good as the action in this film.
I would agree.
Overall, I would say I give this film 3.5 stars because the action was fantastic. The characters were amazing, but the story, it's only half of a story. It's pretty simple as far as stories go because most of it's an action set piece.
Yeah.
And the villains were underdeveloped.
Yeah, we could use some backstory for Doomsday. I think that would have bumped this up a star for sure. I also give it 3.5 stars. I think that it was very true to the comics. It had great emotional beats to it.
Yeah.
And I think it did a great job of setting up the sequel that's to come.
I can't wait to see it. I know it's coming early next year. We don't have an exact date, but I'm looking forward to it for sure.
So yeah, that does it for this review. If you went ahead and rented or bought the Death of Superman animated movie, go ahead and let us know what you thought of it by reaching out to us either on social media or through email, dynamicduelpodcast@gmail.com, and we're on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram.
All the social media, which you can find links to on our website, dynamicduel.com, along with a link to our Patreon and our merch store. Don't forget to listen to the end of this episode for a preview of this Thursday's bonus content in which Joseph pitches his Inhumans film, which is actually really good and exclusively on our Patreon.
In our next episode, we're going to find out who would win in a fight between Martian Manhunter and Vision.
Looking forward to this match.
It's a big one.
It is a big one. 2 A-listers, in my opinion. Is Vision an A-lister? He's been in a movie.
I would consider him
He's
an
been
A-lister.
in a $1 billion film. He's an A-lister now.
Yeah, definitely. And Vision is so cool. Martian Manhunter less so, and he's definitely going down.
What?
Yeah, what good is Martian Manhunter's telepathy going to do in this situation?
Everything, my
exactly.
friend. Everything.
So yeah, we're going to break down each character's history and stats and run simulations to find out who would actually win in a fight between the two. So look forward to that. Please rate, review, subscribe, share, all the things with all of your friends. It really helps people who may not be familiar with the show, who like, movies and comic books, learn about us. I think that does it for this episode.
Up, and away.
True believers. As the royal family sneaks their way through the ship, Supremor visits Black Bolt and explains that the energy that's being siphoned from him is powering a large weapon strong enough to destroy entire planets with one blast. Think of like a Death Star, but with quasi-sonic waves instead of a big laser. The Kree ship is about to test it on a Skrull colony planet. The royal family barges in to save Black Bolt, but Supremor uses his telekinesis to fight them back single-handedly. He beams himself and the family to the surface of the test planet where the Death Star weapon is about to fire. Supremor tells them to enjoy their last moments before teleporting himself back to the ship. Maximus immediately uses DWAS to teleport away and save himself, to Medusa's and the family's frustration. Maximus teleports to Black Bolt's side and informs him of the royal family's imminent death. Black Bolt uses his strength to free one arm from his shackles and grabs Maximus. He telepathically pleads with Maximus to save the family as the weapons test clocks down to 0. The Death Star fires on the Skrull colony planet where their royal family is. The planet begins blasting apart, and the family braces themselves. Crystal holds the ground beneath them together as much as she can.